Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This episode of Coffee and Football is brought to you by MyBookie. Be sure that you're in the game with the good folks at MyBookie. And also, be sure to tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking this morning. Get your questions in. Jerry with the glasses on already.
I realized I failed to chat miserably yesterday because I said I'd open the show with these on. Every day Texas is number one, so I apologize for failing. Offensive grade F.
All right, well, we got a absolute lot to talk about this morning, so we're just going to jump. Whoa, what happened there? We're going to jump right into it, and nothing has changed game line wise. I'll get it out here in a second. Texas still a 38.5-point favorite, and guys, it's still going to be pretty dang hot when it comes to kickoff on Saturday.
That's less than last Saturday and the Saturday before that. I'll just put it that way. So we're moving in the right direction.
That's right. Well, Sark also met with the media yesterday. What were y'all's main takeaways from that?
Oh, I feel like Sark, first of all, the major news coming out of it, obviously, was the health of Quinn Ewers. He said that Quinn practiced on Monday. He didn't say how much Quinn practiced, by the way. He wasn't really specific. He said, hey, Quinn was out there. He practiced today. Now, he could have been on the sideline throwing the ball, or he could have been in there with the ones or twos, or even, just taking reps and scout team. That was probably the main news of the day. He said that right now, if you had to categorize Quinn Ewers as anything in particular, you'd call him questionable. Of course, the Wednesday SEC media injury report comes out on that Wednesday, and we'll know a little bit more by then. I was told last week, as was Jerry, that it would be a game week decision. They would see how Quinn is doing this week and then go from there. They're not looking to rush anything. We've had discussions about, how healthy is healthy enough for Quinn to start. Nobody wants him to get into a situation where he keeps retweaking the same injury. Certainly not in a game like Mississippi State, where you think you're or you are the major favorite. And so that was a primary piece. The other thing that Sark talked about, and I thought maybe the neatest nugget out of all of it, was how he thinks his team is trying to consistently get better. That ethos that is kind of running through the entire team right now. He talked about how Jaden Blue, who had a 4-touchdown performance on Saturday, came out of the film room on Monday morning and said, man, I could have done a lot better. I could have had a better game than 4 touchdowns. So that's one to work on. They were asking, somebody just asked about the injury updates to Derek Williams. He was out with a hamstring. Trey Wisner was out with a hammy as well. It is very possible both of those guys are back this week. I think that Wisner could have played, just like Jaden Blue could have played against UTSA. Texas is being very protective right now of its backs, and deservedly so, in my opinion. And when I say protective, I mean they're not playing them both at the same time if they don't have to. Because Texas does not want to enter SEC play without its two best backs in Wisner and Jaden Blue. Not to mention Jarrett Gibson seems to be nursing a little ankle injury right now too. So that's a lot of what went on with Steve Sarkisian's press conference yesterday. We also got news from Jeff Lebby's press conference. Jerry, to that. Jerry, go over what happened in the Mississippi State press conference yesterday.
Yeah, so Jeff Lebby, obviously, he confirmed that Blake Shapen was out for the year, that Michael Van Buren, the freshman, will start. Chris Parsons, the redshirt freshman, is number 2. He also, Kevon Lee, they have two backs that they've been using. Kevon Lee, the Penn State transfer out of IMG Academy, had a 500-plus yard season at Penn State. He is now out for this game, and he said an extended period of time. So that may be the season. We'll see see on that. But the main thing is Kevon Lee not available, starting running back not available for the game in Austin this weekend. Isaac Smith, their best defensive player, their safety, their leading tackler by a good number. When he was asked specifically about his injury, he said he doesn't have an answer right now. So obviously that would put it in the doubtful mode right now So we'll see if Isaac Smith plays in the game Saturday as well. So not only do they come into this game not playing well, although Levy thought his offensive line played better against Florida. Now, was it Florida's not very good? I think that's part of it. But they did have more rushing yards because they couldn't run the ball at all at Arizona State and had 66 yards the week before against Toledo. So he thought the offensive line was playing better. But injury-wise, they're pretty beat up right now after the last couple of games. And they're not coming in nearly full strength for this game. Freshman quarterback making his first start against the number one team in the country in Austin. So with your starting running back out. Now, the kid from Crystal Springs, the other back's a good player. But they don't have that rotation as they ideally wanted to have it. Ressart mentioned in his press conference yesterday that Mississippi State has good wideouts. And one of those guys Texas fans will remember is Kevin Coleman out of East St. Louis, who Texas dabbled with in recruiting. I think he signed with FSU, transferred over to Mississippi State. He's the leading receiver, 22 for 287. So the reality is this may be the best outside of Torrey Horton. This may be the most athletic receivers Texas has faced this year, which will be good for Texas to face that with a week off before the Oklahoma and Georgia games.
All right. Well, before we move on, Bobby, if you're ready, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about MyBookie.
Yeah, absolutely. With all the excitement of the season, make sure you're in the game with MyBookie. Bet any matchup, hundreds of college player props, and take advantage of weekly risk-free bets. The best part is you can do it all, anytime, anywhere, straight from your phone. Visit mybookie.ag and use promo code ONTexas. There's no space in there. All any caps or no caps, doesn't matter, to get started. It's MyBookie's 10th year anniversary, and they're rolling out the red carpet for bettors. Bet big and bet confident with risk-free Thursdays as well. If your boosted bet doesn't hit, you get all your money back. Weekly no sweat win-win bets all season long. And sign up now using My On Texas to cash in on a double deposit bonus. It's a no-brainer. Double the cash in your account before you even place your first bet. But do not wait on it because it's only available for a limited time. For those of you who have been playing with MyBookie, they've got something already been playing with MyBookie. They've got something extra for you too, a brand new loyalty rewards program in MyBookie Plus. It's simple. The more you play, the more you earn. And as you progress through the tiers, unlock exclusive promotions, epic giveaways, and cash back in your account. That's mybookie.ag.
By the way, y'all in the chat are correct. I was wondering on Kevin Coleman. It wasn't striking with me correctly. Committed to FSU, ended up going with Dion to Jackson State, and then transferred to Louisville before Mississippi State. Good call.
All right, Jerry. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us what is going on with recruiting, as it's always busy this time of year.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, we're going to play some Jonathan Cunningham highlights against Rockwall from last Thursday. He's number 2. They move him all around. He plays inside backer. He plays outside backer. He'll even play in the slot. So that one, you guys to see some. There he is, number 2. Some Jonathan Cunningham highlights from early in the season, just from one game where he had a big game Thursday. While I talk about recruiting, well, one of the key things is that this weekend will be the impacts of the hurricane headed to Florida, and which may kind of skirt that Brunswick, Savannah area in Georgia on the east side, the dirty side of that storm before turning north. It looks like Walter Mathis Jr. will bump back the visit to the Georgia game. That's what's expected due to the hurricane. I think it's going to be tough for them to get out, flight delays, everything. So you got to make an early call on that. I think they'll bump back to the Georgia game. Javion Hilson out of Cocoa, Space Coast, he should be good to get in, still planning to come in. Now, we'll see with the track of that, but he should fly out of Orlando. He should be good to come in and get to Austin. But I do expect Walter Mathis Jr. and family to bump back to the Georgia game. That's as far as some visitors this weekend, which, kind of in flux there a little bit. Chase Sims, defensive lineman, Richmond Randall, will be on his official visit this weekend. I mentioned yesterday that A&M, as they should do, tried to get him to cancel that visit. Didn't work. He's coming to Texas this weekend. I like the probability of that flip as long as the conversations go well, because he did not take a June official visit. So this is the first chance for him to sit down with Steve Sarkisian and the defensive staff, Kenny Baker and that defensive staff. But I do think Texas is where Chase Sims wants to be. in an ideal world. Dalen McCutcheon, FSU wide receiver commit out of Lovejoy. He's scheduled to be in. Number of 2026s will be in, including 2 offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen. I think there's 3 offensive linemen in 26 class that could commit to Texas right now. John Turntine out of North Crowley, Toa Katoa out of Euless Trinity, and Nicholas Robertson out of Klein. Both of those guards are scheduled to be in this weekend, Toa Katoa and Nicholas Robertson. That Georgia visitors list continues to look extremely impressive, and that will now include, looks like, Walter Mathis and his family for the Georgia game. Joseph Mbaktu, official visit Georgia game likely. Jonah Williams will be on his official visit. Uwasu Boateng, the linebacker from IMG, that'll be his official visit. Dia Bell will be there. I mean, Kelshawn Johnson will be there. The A&M wide receiver commitment. That Georgia list is build. That Mississippi State list is going to be a little bit affected by this hurricane, I think.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. And a couple of recruiting questions that I saw that I wanted for you to go ahead and knock out, because we've had a couple people ask this in different ways. But any chance that Michael Fasusi is looking elsewhere?
Not yet. Has not been in communication with Texas early this season. See if that changes.
And then we got a super chat here for you, Jerry, from Colin Davis. He says, Jerry, do you know anything about Michael Hawkins from high school? Strength and weaknesses besides running?
Yeah, so I think you guys know I've known Kevin Murray a long time. Tremendous quarterback instructor. He doesn't have to do it much anymore. I mean, but he worked with Michael Hawkins for a long time. And I kind of laughed when some people in our industry were thinking Michael Hawkins was going to be a receiver. And I always respond to those people, Kevin Murray doesn't train wide receivers, guys. I mean, like, he ain't taking on a client that's a wide receiver. And obviously, Michael Hawkins is the son of the former Oklahoma and NFL corner, Michael Hawkins. Yeah, his strengths, he is a playmaker. He has got and I remember talking to Kevin Murray about this when the kid was a sophomore. I called Kev. I said, tell me about Michael Hawkins, because he's starting to pop on the recruiting radar. He said he's got a quarterback mind. He said, I'm just telling you, he can do it upstairs. And that was when he had been working with him a couple of years, so he had a good feel for the kid. So he's got the quarterback mind. He's tough. He's a playmaker. Wearing that uniform means a lot to him. Obviously, his father played there. And he's going to look, his first real game action was Tennessee last week against a really good team. I think he's going to make plays for Oklahoma. I think he makes them a better offense when they were dismal with that offensive line. And the injuries at wide receiver, I think, are impactful, and that can impact his ability and how quickly he progresses as a passer on some level at the college level, because you're going to make mistakes. You're still a freshman. I don't care if you got it upstairs or not. It's still a tough game for these guys. But I expect Oklahoma to be a better offensive team with him. Just for the simple fact, Bobby, he's a playmaker. He's fearless. Like the play he made against Tennessee going into the end zone when it looked like he could have hurt himself. Those plays go over really well with your teammates.
Yeah, I want to say this. I think that he does have a quarterback mindset. He also has a playmaker's mindset. The question becomes, is OU better off with him now as opposed to Jackson Arnold? Jackson Arnold is a drop back quarterback. He fashions himself as an athletic quarterback, but he's really not all that athletic. It's like he can run straight forward, but he's not going to make people miss in the open field. And given OU's issues at offensive line, not unlike what Texas has faced had in the last 10 years prior to Kyle Flood coming in, it's often that it's better that you sit there and take a mobile, truly athletic quarterback and play with him than take all the sacks that you're going to take with a more statuesque guy and get yourself in trouble with throwing interceptions, et cetera, because he's under such duress. So, look, Michael Hawkins has a long way to go as a quarterback. He's a typical freshman quarterback, not unlike the ones that we've seen ourselves. That being said, he can make plays. He is very elusive and keeps his head up when he starts running. So he can throw those option passes kind of when he starts scrambling and still keep his head up. He was a bright spot for them against Tennessee. But I watched that entire game. He was not a answer to beat Texas, in my opinion. He was an answer to maybe keep that game competitive. He wasn't Caleb Williams. I'll put it that way. He doesn't have that kind of arm or accuracy. And so I feel like the Sooners are in trouble right now on offense, and they know it. But it doesn't necessarily start with their quarterback. It starts with their offensive line. And some really bad injuries.
I'll say this, wide receiver injuries. But I also want to say this. He's a massive upgrade over Jackson Arnold for them. Gives them a chance this season. Massive. Jackson Arnold was bad football player. Bad.
He liked to turn the ball over, that's for sure.
And, that's just no.
Hey, Dan Schubert, we've got your super chat, but no question or comment attached to it. If you'll send it in normal, I'll make sure to fix that for you. A couple other recruiting ones for you, Jerry, real quick. Corey J wants to know who's the 2026 defensive end from Temple that Texas is interested in.
Jamarian Carlton, great frame, a lot of upside there at Temple. He's been on campus multiple times, will be on campus, I think, this weekend in Georgia game for sure. So he's a guy in 2026 that Texas really likes. There aren't many guys that can commit to Texas right now. I just don't think they would be in the mindset of taking, because there's a lot of kids that want to commit, but he's a guy that Texas really likes.
And the question that all Texas fans want to know from you from UTX, do we have any highs? If so, how many?
I think there's one.
There you go. All right.
There ain't that many guys that left out there, by the way, Jerry, that are not committed elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look, like we always do, at the upcoming SEC games. But before we do that, I want y'all to know Texas had the largest home game attendance in the SEC last week with 102,850, followed by LSU. The only two schools with 100 plus. And then A&M, Jerry, I kind of figured you would like this tweet since you're always razzing A&M fans. But quite the showing for Texas against Louisiana Monroe.
No, it was absolutely. And yeah, look, my whole thing with A&M fans a few weeks ago was don't tell me you're the number one fan base if you only show up when you want to. That the A&M players needed the fan base to show up for the McNeese game badly. If you're the number one fan base, then you got to show up for that game. If you don't, then stop your yapping. That was my point. No different than the other team. By the way, what you put up there, I think is why Lane Kiffin goes to Florida.
Put that back up real quick.
I'm about to bring it back up.
And look, that's good. Ole Miss is really good, and that's probably a sellout for them or close to it. But University of Florida is one of those high level programs.
Yeah, an extra 30,000 people in the stands.
And an extra 150 players in your state to recruit that are really talented.
All right, well, let's look at the upcoming SEC games this week. And my apologies for it being a little small, but a lot of information packed in there. Kentucky at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 17.5-point favorite. Oklahoma at Auburn. Oklahoma, a 2.5-point favorite. A&M's a 3.5-point favorite over Arkansas. Texas, of course, we've talked about quite a bit. But the one that I think everybody's interested in, Georgia and Alabama. Georgia, even though it's at Alabama, is a 2-point favorite. And then last but not least, LSU is obviously going to be a favorite over South Alabama.
Let's get one out of the way early. I think LSU's getting too many points. I think at South Alabama, they're beat up, man. I mean, they are beat up. That is a team that's lost two of their top three defensive players for the season.
Yeah, I watched South Alabama. I watched Major's team on that Thursday night game. I was in Austin, so I went and watched it at the Tavern with our producer Matt Hutchison. They run the ball a lot, and if they can't run, they're in trouble. So if LSU and Blake Baker, the defense coordinator there, can come up with a game plan to stop South Alabama's run, their offense is going to have some issues. I would say this as it relates to the three games that I'm really watching are obviously OU, Auburn, Arkansas, A&M, and Georgia, Alabama. Texas plays four of those teams in the last half of the schedule. We could talk about Georgia, Bama. It's kind of the meeting of the juggernauts. We'll see. It's really Kalen DeBoer's first big test as an Alabama coach to see where they're at where Jalen Milroe is at within that offense, because it is a little bit different for him this year than it was a year ago. We'll also see exactly where Georgia's offense is right now. They are clearly missing Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey from a year ago. Those guys were just really good receivers that took a lot of pressure off of Carson Beck, and they haven't necessarily replaced them with high quality receivers like Texas has with Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden. Georgia hasn't necessarily done that.
And they had to kick off Rah-Rah before the season.
And they had to kick off Rah-Rah Thomas, the Mississippi State transfer, before the season. Arkansas A&M is one that's going to be really tight, I think. Arkansas got out of Auburn last week with a 24-14 win. Auburn can't move the football right now to save their neck. And Arkansas has a quarterback that is capable. But they've had some, after starting pretty strong on offense, they've had some difficulties of late moving the football consistently. They've had some big plays. A&M got away from Bowling Green last week with a 1-score win. Now, they were up by 10 in the fourth, and Bowling Green kicked a field goal to get it within a 1 score. But I like A&M in that game, I think, although I think it's close to a toss-up. Oklahoma and Auburn, this is where we'll see exactly where Oklahoma is this year, in my opinion. This is the game before the bye, just like Texas is against Mississippi State. Both OU and Texas have a bye next week. If Oklahoma loses this game, Jerry,
it's a must-win for both teams, by the way.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze is starting. The pressure on him is starting to mount. I'll just put it that way. OU, however, with I think OU's defense might outscore Auburn. That is my general take on this. I know it's at Auburn, and that could be another factor, but I think Oklahoma goes into Auburn and comes out a winner by more than 2.5. That's my general opinion.
Some people are asking if Georgia beats Alabama, do they vault to 1? It depends on how the game looks. If Georgia walks into Tuscaloosa and wins 34-17, yes, and they should. If it's a 2017 game, it could go either way, and Georgia doesn't look great and Alabama doesn't look great. I don't think that's a given. And that's just my opinion. I don't think it's a given. I think Georgia's got to look good. They got to look better than they did against Kentucky. If they look a little bit better, and it's an ugly game, and they walked out of their win, I don't think it's a guarantee that Georgia goes back to 1. I think it depends on how that game plays out. Now, for Alabama, if Georgia rolls in there and Alabama wins 34-14, then they might make the big jump. Again, if it's a 2017 could go either way game, I'm not sure what that will actually mean. By the way, I think what's interesting to me, I think Ole Miss is going to beat up on Kentucky pretty good. Kentucky cannot score with Ole Miss. No chance. And that's at Ole Miss. Oklahoma-Auburn, my opinion, it's a must-win game for both teams. I think Oklahoma's got the better quarterback on the road. And so I like Oklahoma. And I think Oklahoma's defensive front, I mean, they're good players. I think all 4 of their starters are probably drafted players. So, and they're better on defense now. How beat up are they? You're going to know early in the game. How beat up are they? But it's a must-win game for both teams. But I guarantee you, Oklahoma, if Brent Venables loses this game, their people are going to start chirping in Norman. And if Hugh Freeze is already saying dumb stuff right now in the media, so he's definitely already feeling it. He's got to win. It's a must-win game for both these teams this season. This is what Hugh Freeze had to say on Tiger Talk last night.
He said, I love Sam Pittman, and I hope he wins the rest of his games. But I'm telling you that the hard truth is if we played them 9 more times, we'd beat them 9 more times. That's what's hard to take.
Yeah, I'm glad
you lost at home, man. You lost at home.
Take the L, dude. Take the L, Hugh Freeze.
That's just. I mean, look, if he had played on the road and turned it over 6 times, he played at home.
Yeah.
Steve Sarkisian does not need that quote attached to his name ever. I'll just put it that way. That's embarrassing. That's an embarrassing thing for a head coach to say.
Yeah.
All right, before we move on to our next segment, something that isn't embarrassing, at least not for Jerry Hamilton, is Manscaped. And if you're ready, Jerry, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about it.
I'm always ready. Here's the good news for Mississippi State, though. You've already got this a few times this year, so the pain's not going to be as bad. All right, it's time for the Beard and Balls bundle, baby. Fellas, do you want your grooming routine to be a one-and-done deal? Well, the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your private parts are over, thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed from 12 to 6, introducing the Beard and Balls bundle featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger, a trimmer for the moneymaker and another for the boys downstairs. Different conversation if it's both. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code ONTEXAS, all caps, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code ONTEXAS at manscaped.com. For the premium grooming experience, you got to trust Manscaped. All of Texas opponents have. The Manscaped World Tour.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much for that. All right, let's move on, guys. A couple of defenders for the Longhorns have really been standing out here lately. And we're going to start with this guy right here, Jahdae Barron. And I'm going to let y'all just take it away on this one.
Yeah, I mean, look at Jahdae. He returned this year after tinkering with the idea of going in the NFL draft. And he is clearly one of the highest graded DBs in the country, the highest rated SEC DB through 4 games. A lot of people were wondering whether or not Texas had the defensive players that the SEC has. He is certainly one of them, playing extraordinarily well right now. Young man against Colorado State made that unbelievable interception, and he's been solid the rest of the season. And then also, guys, we had Anthony Hill. He came out with Pro Football Focus, also rated him. Hill was rated the number 1 linebacker in the country in week 4. That's high cotton for a young man that is only a sophomore. So Texas defense getting some accolades. We knew the Texas offense was getting accolades with Quinn Ewers, Jake Majors, all those guys getting a lot of, flowers, I guess, for lack of a better term, after the Michigan game and scoring over 50 points in 3 of 4 games so far this year. That is very, very strong for the Texas defense and indicative, I think, of where this defense can go this season.
My biggest takeaway Saturday from Anthony Hill was, you know how you know when a player's really confident? When he starts high-stepping 1.5 steps after the interception. The guy was high-stepping on the 23-yard line after the interception. That's when you know a guy's really playing with confidence. Hey, by the way, here's a great question for the chat. Jeremy Levins, what Longhorn legends, one on offense and defense, would you put in the starting lineup to complete this Texas championship run? I think we should change this up a little bit, Jeremy. I mean, it can't be Heisman Trophy winner Ricky Williams or maybe potential Hall of Famer a Derek Johnson or Casey Hampton. I don't think it can be guys like that. Think about some other Texas players that are really, really good. What would they add? I thought about Sergio Kendall. I thought about Sergio on defense. And I also thought about Aaron Ross at corner on this team. I think obviously, and I'm saying no Michael Huff, but nobody that was like the award-winning top 10 pick.
Well, you can't just take everybody out of the.
What are you going to do, Jeremy? That's like I'll tell you who I would pick, and it would be Casey Hampton or Sean Rogers.
I was thinking a defensive.
They need somebody on the interior, man. They need somebody on the interior more than they need a big back right now.
Yeah.
My 2 positions would be defensive, like dominator on the interior, or a bigger back to complement the offense.
UT boy's got a good one. Nathan
Young.
Nathan Vasher. That's actually a really good one on this team. Whoa, he might have 7 picks on this team. He could play corner, could play nickel, could play safety, return man.
They need if you're asking me what are the 2 spots right now that they need could use a big time player, it's a bigger running back that can handle inside zone, even though I thought Jaden Blue did a tremendous job of it on Saturday. That was a ULM defense, not an Alabama or Georgia defense. And then it's an interior run stopper on defense, somebody that can really just plug it. And I think when I think of that, I mean, I immediately think of guys like Sean Rogers and Casey Hampton that were just freaks at doing so. Even Tavondre Sweat on this team would improve this team from a stop the run perspective.
Man, and look, if we're going anybody, I mean, and if we go anybody, not quarterback, I mean, Cedric Benson at running back would have been unbelievable. Party. But if we're going anybody, I'm just going to get greedy on offense. Just give me Roy Williams if we can go anybody, and I'll stick Roy out there with Bond and whoever else, and Texas will average 55 points a game. I mean, running back doesn't even matter at that point. You're just like, hey, here's Roy Williams out on the outside. What are you going to do with that? Oh, there's Isaiah Bond. And, I mean, you'd have like what Alabama had at wide receiver almost. But I get the inside guys on defense.
I cannot keep up with the chat. I've tried to put everybody's answers up there that I can, but y'all are just going so quick.
That's why I thought it was don't put Blake Bryant. That was a good one, though.
You know who would be a less heralded long-term? There it is, right there. Mm-hmm. Big back that could run inside zone. What do you think?
Yeah.
He would be devastating on inside zone.
Yeah.
All right. And thank you for the super chat. Sugar Daddy UT Boy says, how about Garrett Gilbert? Thank you for the super chat, UT Boy. Oh, man. And speaking of super chats, guys, we got some more that we need to knock out here. By the way, Dan, still waiting on your question. If you put it in the chat, I apologize. It's moving so quickly. You may have to do it again because I have not seen it. And Jeff Carey wants to know, do we have a better chance of losing this week or next?
Well, you can't lose next because you play bye.
They'll give up more points in practice, though. The defense will give up more points next week in practice.
I would say that 1.8% is higher than 0 that ESPN gave Texas. What is it? 98.2% chance Texas wins the game against Mississippi State on Saturday. Hey, by the way, we are going to have our tailgate again this week. So just a quick reminder for those folks going to the game. Come on out and visit us. We'll put the address and drop a pin in the chat either later this week about where we're going to be located. All right. Blake has already done it, so that's good. We will be out there again. We're going to do a tailgate video there and podcast. But y'all come out. We'll have food, drinks by flight. Duck Camp gave away $200 gift certificate this past weekend as well to Michael Eilers. He was the winner. Congratulations to him. So we've had a lot of stuff going on at the tailgate. Please come join us if you're coming to the game.
All right, we got some super chats.
By the way, next week, off week, guys, just keep it chill, team. I'm actually giving Georgia a better chance against Alabama because their off week was handled pretty well off the field, so that probably gives them a better chance this week.
Yeah, Texas. What you're saying is Texas doesn't need to get players need to get in any trouble next week.
Yeah,
and I completely agree. Keep your nose clean.
All right. We got, speaking of other teams, some questions regarding the Sooners here. Some super chats. Henry James, BC, thank you for your super chat. Who on the Sooners offense would start for Texas?
If Nick Anderson was healthy, he would start.
Yes. And I think Deion Burks would. I think they've got 2 stars. I mean, look, I like Texas receiving core. Deion Burks is going to be probably second, third rounder. Nick Anderson, first, second rounder. If they're healthy.
And then our other super chat here, Sugar Daddy, once again, thank you as always. Could going all in on Jackson Arnold end up putting burnt vegetables, as the chat likes to say, on the hot seat?
Yes. And I think he knows it.
Yeah.
He had a good second year last year, but he's got to be consistent. He can't be you can't win 10 one year and then 6 the next at OU. You got to be building towards consistency. I personally think he's building a elite defense right now. He really is. They've got a lot of good young players. They've got some good older players. Their secondary, particularly their safeties, are really good right now. So I like what he's building. He just made a fundamental mistake at quarterback. Fundamental. Letting Dylan Gabriel go was, you let a guy that was top 5 in the Heisman voting go for an unproven freshman. I'm just sorry. And I do think that my thing on Jackson Arnold, if you had a good offensive line right now, Jackson Arnold would be fine at quarterback for you.
You think?
Oh, yes.
I don't. Bobby,
yeah, if OU had its typical offensive line, with 2 or 3 first rounders and, a Creed Humphrey at center and all that crap to keep him clean. I mean, just remember, Texas had a hard time getting after the OU quarterbacks through the years. I feel like that's one of those that he would have been just fine. They would win 8-9 games with him if they had a better offensive line. But when you don't have an offensive line, all bets are off with Jackson. Yeah. And that's why he won't be a pro quarterback.
I think he's always been a one-read quarterback, and
yeah, no, I agree with that. But one read sometimes is enough if you have a good offensive line, Jared. That's what I'm saying. You can go to it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Quinn Ewers, by and large, was a one-read quarterback as his first year as a starter. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
All right. Our next super chat here comes from Major Alexander. And thank you, Major. He says, I think Bama is going to get Georgia. Of course, we discussed this a minute ago, but if y'all had to make a prediction, who you got?
Dude, the game could go either way. I mean, like that one's a really tough game to what Georgia shows up. It's probably a good thing that they had the Kentucky game and escaped it. Then the off week before Bama, see if they're a little healthier. Now, Tate Ratledge, I think, is a big loss for Georgia. Like, people are like, well, Georgia's got really good players. Yeah, you don't. It's like if Kelvin Banks went down. Texas has good players, but you don't replace All-Americans. So Georgia's had to shuffle the offensive line, but they've had a week to do it. But you don't replace All-Americans in first-round draft picks. You just don't. Not that they're experienced players. So that's a big loss for them on the offensive line. They have 2 really good running backs, though. Etienne's really good, and the freshman's a blur. That guy's got a chance. I think Alabama and pass pro is going to be the key Saturday. I think Georgia can get after it. I'm telling you, the Jalen Walker kid, they don't turn him loose much because he's wanted to be an inside linebacker. But when they do, he's as good a pass rusher as anybody in the country. I think if Alabama protects well, Georgia could be in a little trouble.
I think Alabama's going to win. I think they've got Alabama's running backs are not just good. I think they've got 2, and they don't look like it on the hoof. Neither of them are particularly impressive on the hoof. I just love their running backs. I would say this, the one thing that might be different, Jalen Milroe is a very talented quarterback, but he doesn't get to his second read real easy either. No. And if Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp and was it Glenn Schumann, I think is the name, if those guys can dial up a defense that kind of takes that away from Jalen Milroe, they might have some problems. Kalen DeBoer is going to have to get inventive on how to run the football against Georgia. And that's hard when you're going up against Georgia because not many people can run it on him run it on Georgia, period, much less try to be inventive with it.
John Sims has a question. Does it matter to us who wins Georgia? Yeah, I want Georgia to win the game. And I want Texas to win the next 2 games, and I want it to be a 1-2 matchup. When Georgia rolls to town, it'll be the biggest college football game of the season.
Will it be the biggest home game for the Longhorns in how long? I mean,
Alabama.
Bigger than that.
No, Texas was just a team.
Yeah. You got to probably get back
bigger than Alabama.
You got to probably go back to 08, 09, somewhere in there.
They didn't have any big home games that their
Missouri
biggest games.
In 08. Missouri was the top 10 team. Texas was number 1, but I would say Ohio State.
Probably.
06.
Yeah.
I don't even think that. Texas had Colt McCoy as a freshman. I mean,
yeah.
Biggest home game in I'm trying to
Nebraska.
think.
Patrick Page said since Nebraska, one of those years, probably.
Maybe. I don't even remember a particularly huge Nebraska game. I remember a big win against Nebraska at home, but I don't know if I've ever seen a 1-2 matchup in DKR. Have we? I mean, that's something for John Bianco to tell us. I don't think we've ever seen a 1v2, unless it's like Texas Arkansas back in 1964 or Texas TCU, you know what I mean? One of those long ago's. I have to ask some folks, but
what was no. In 2008, Texas was ranked number 2 and Ohio State was ranked number 1.
They were?
Yep, I just looked it up. Of course, Texas lost that game 4-7.
2006, the year after the national championship.
2006. Yep.
Yeah.
If I said 2008, I meant 2006.
There you go.
My apologies.
I didn't expect Texas to be number 2 in the country after losing Vince Young. So.
Well, what happened? They were ranked number 3. They beat UNT week 1. Whoever was number 2 back then lost week 1. So Texas ended up moving up to number 2 for
somebody probably lost to App State in the season opener or something.
That may have been right about that time when Michigan did that, Jerry. Okay, so that leaves that out. I'll just say this. The build-up for that midway through the season, that was an early season game as well. Yeah. 1 versus 2 midway through the season. I'm guessing it happened at some point with Texas versus Arkansas. But other than that, I can't in the 60s. I can't think of any other time Texas would have played a conference opponent and been ranked 1 and 2 midway through the season in Austin. I mean, I haven't even thought about this until now. That puts some perspective on it and about why Jerry wants Georgia to win that game.
And look, that'd be the biggest recruiting game for Texas. I mean, with where they're at, kids, the way recruiting's changed, kids travel more in recruiting. I mean, that game, Tyler Atkinson, the 5-star linebacker from Grayson, still scheduled to come in. I mean, there may be, counting commitments, 8, 9, 10 5-star kids at that game in 25 and 26 classes. I mean, that would rival that. The visitor list could end up rivaling an old LSU at Bama game under Nick. Because there'll be kids that want to come watch Georgia too.
Yep.
That Ohio.
All right, now you got me rooting for Georgia in this game. I really thought Alabama. Now I'm hoping Georgia wins. So,
hey, by the way, Tyler Lard says a great point. Also, F1 is that weekend, biggest weekend in Austin ever. I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's going to be the fastest. Texas offense, Georgia defense, F1. Woo, a lot of speed in Austin.
Good one, Jerry.
Oh, good stuff. All right, more super chats here, fellas. Let's go ahead and finish the ones about other teams, and then we'll come back to the Longhorns because most of these are comments from here on out. Sports fan Jack, thank you for your super chat. He says Hugh Freeze is a terrible leader of a team.
Sandra Bullock totally agrees. She had to come coach the team in the movie. You couldn't read his players.
He was the high school coach for Michael Orr, for those unaware.
Sandra Bullock was not having any of that. No, you don't read your players well. You need to learn your players.
I can see that scene in my head right now that you've said that. And then UT boy weighs in on the same situation, telling Hugh Freeze, take the L.
Yes. So. I mean, just don't. Who says that? Well, we would have beat them 9 out of 10 times. Are you sure? Because you couldn't move the football. I mean, it's like it would be one thing if you were like, you know, inside the opponent's 10 5 times and fumbled 4. You know what I mean? That was not the case.
Oh, man. All right. And then a couple of others real quick about other teams. Victor Aldridge says, OU fans are getting antsy. I think everybody can agree with that. And thank you, Victor.
I want to say this. I think part of that has to do, the reason they're getting antsy is part of that is because the outside noise was telling them, why are you getting rid of Gabriel and going with Arnold? And they were like, no, we love Arnold. We love Arnold. And all the outside noise was saying, y'all are idiots for saying this. And then they went ahead and did it. And now they're sitting with themselves. Oh, well, maybe our coach doesn't have all the answers. And so, yes, they are antsy because what other answers doesn't he have? Right. So you start getting anxious.
And that leads me to our next super chat, Bobby. I'm glad you brought that up. Jerry's Jack Links, thank you as always. He says, did Brett Venables let Gabriel go, or did Gabriel see the writing on the wall?
Crazy thing about this scenario is he had to, else Arnold was going to transfer, and now Arnold's going to transfer anyways. That's the wild thing about the whole scenario that's playing out.
Yeah, he did let Gabriel go. They could have paid the NIL for Gabriel as opposed to Jackson Arnold. Yes. The answer is yes. They let him go. Gabriel didn't see the writing on the wall because Gabriel's a better quarterback than Jackson Arnold.
Yeah. All right, let's get back.
That one hurts more because he's now at Oregon. He's on a good team too.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get back to some Texas-related questions now, guys. And this is a question that's come up multiple times today and yesterday. But James Williams with the Super Chat, he says, I hear Sadir got into an argument on the sideline.
All right, I'm going to deal with this the best way. I know other people have gone out there and tried to explain what happened. I'm going to tell you what I'm willing to tell you at this point. I just want to say it that way. Because I'm not going to get into the particulars about a situation with a kid. I'm just not. There's no need for us to go there here. Y'all can read between the lines if you see fit. Sadir got into an argument with someone on the sidelines on Saturday night around the third quarter. After that argument, Sadir was escorted off the field by the strength and conditioning staff and did not return to the sidelines later in the game. Okay. We could talk about what was said and all this other stuff, but I'm not going there. Suffice to say that there will likely be repercussions for Sadir. Sadir may take some of his own steps in that regard as well. We'll wait and see. But the reality of it is that I don't expect Sadir Mitchell to play against Mississippi State this weekend. I'll tell you that much. But beyond that, I'm going to let Sark and his group deal with it how they want to deal with it.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. And going back to Jackson Arnold for a second, UT boy with another super chat says Jackson Arnold would have been a 2-star if his name was Smith.
Or if he wasn't playing at one of the Denton schools where he had a bunch of talent around him.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, UT boy. Now then, another one from Jerry's Jack Links. He says, for argument's sake, say Sark and Quinn knew he would be out a few weeks. Does that mean that Quinn's been watching OU and Georgia film for 3 straight weeks?
I would bet that's happening a little anyways. A little bit anyways. I mean, it's not that you don't respect UL Monroe. The coaches prepare for that game. They prepare for any game. They coach to a perfection line. That's what the coaches do. But I wouldn't be shocked if you aren't watching a little bit already.
Right. And then Chuck Mason wants to know, do you think 2 buys this year is beneficial for teams?
Huge it's huge for, I think it's huge for teams that are actually in the playoff picture. I mean, if you're bad, it don't matter. But if you're in the playoff picture, I think it's huge because this is a long, grueling season now in college football. And this is the first one of this kind. So I think 2 off weeks is really big for health of a team if you're a really good team. Somebody would have to truly find a way to convince me otherwise. I think it matters a lot.
You got to be happy if you're – I'll just say this. You got to be happy if you're OU right now, okay? Because Nick Anderson retweaked the quad. Deion Burks went out with a soft tissue injury. It looked like his oblique or something like that for him. They have a chance to get back after the bye week against to play against Texas. And they have Auburn this week. It just gives injuries a chance to mend. You give if Quinn Ewers doesn't play this week, that gives him 3 full weeks off. And he only misses 2 games, both of which Texas should win. I think that a week off every 5 weeks or every 6 weeks, whatever it's going to be, is good for the health of a football team. Yeah, the little nagging injuries, Trey Wisner's hammy, Jaden Blue's ankle, they can all use an extra week off to actually get back to full health. Now that doesn't the serious injuries, the ones that take weeks and months to heal, are different. But I think that the bye weeks are actually really, really healthy for your team.
Here's another hidden one. Here's a hidden one. If you're really, really good, Texas handles business Saturday as they should. They go on the road to recruit as the number 1 ranked team in the country. And they get to do it. And then you get 2 weeks on the road with your staff recruiting during the season. And if you're good, that tends to matter. I mean, you dang well know that Tashard Choice and Kenny Baker are going to Georgia next week. Probably into Florida next week as well. That polo looks good when you're ranked number 1, man.
All right. Our next super chat, guys, comes from Zach Fisher. Thank you, Zach. We appreciate it. And he says, greetings from Fargo, North Dakota. Lifetime Longhorn fan going to my first home game this Saturday. Any suggestions on must-see or must-do things on game day and while in Austin?
Man, there's a ton. There really is. I don't know what day you're getting in. So if you get in on Friday and stay through Sunday, there's things to do in Austin that are long-term things to do. If it's hot, 95 degrees, go out to Barton Springs and go for a dip with the family. It's a cool natural spring water, natural spring fed. It's cold. It's like 65 degrees in there or 60 degrees, but it's refreshing. It's fun. That's in near downtown Austin. You can also rent a boat and go out on what used to be called Town Lake. Is now Ladybird Lake. You can do that. Go out on Lake Travis and rent a boat. Just a lot of things to do on that Friday if you have the time. On Saturday, I would get there early to I would go eat at Kirby Lane for breakfast near campus. That's what I like to do. And then go to Bevo Boulevard and go around the stadium, watch the players come in, watch the band enter the stadium, join us at our tailgate. Feel free to do all of that. There's a lot of things going on. Come see us, by the way, Friday afternoon at the Co-op. That's where you get all your gear for the game. That's where the majority of people get it. So do it. My wife says the Bat Bridge at night, where you see millions of bats actually leave and go to Mexico for the night and come back. There's just a lot of – Austin's a great town to visit over a short period of time. It's also a great town to live in long term. But for a short visit, it also has that allure too, because it has so many neat little things you can do.
If you this weekend, if you really want to get into the fray, go on over to College Station for the volleyball game Friday, and then come to Austin Saturday for the game. You really feel like getting into it.
All right, a lot more super chats to get into, guys, so we're just going to jump right back into them. And it's 420 somewhere. We thank you for your super chat. He says, love the show every morning. I think the best tape out there for the O-line happened Saturday without Texas on the field. Look at the difference in how much the D-line looked against USC versus Texas. How much Michigan's D-line looked against USC versus Texas.
Man, how much was that? Sark put on a master class of play calling, though, dude. I'm just telling you, Lincoln Riley had no answer for that and didn't get the ball out on the perimeter quickly. He tried to play his normal game, and he just got toasted. I think Michigan's D-line is great. I do. I think Texas' offensive line handled them, to your point, and it bodes well for Texas. But I also give a lot of credit to Steve Sarkisian in that game for getting the ball so easily on the perimeter and making those Michigan defensive linemen were huffing and puffing after the second series because they were chasing everything, every single play. And that caused Michigan to go to the backups pretty quickly. And then Sark tried to jam it down their throat.
Yeah.
I thought we can say the offensive line, Texas offensive line is the foundation of this team, and I think they're really good. So I'm not taking anything away from Jake Majors, Cam Williams, Kelvin Banks, Hayden Connor, Cole Hudson, DJ Cal. I'm not taking anything away from them. Okay. They defeated the Michigan defensive line. Steve Sarkisian helped them do that, though. Whereas I don't think Lincoln Riley helped his team that much until the second half when he tried to figure some things out and said, oh, well, I can't just do this power crap that I normally do. I have to start the other way. If I guarantee if Lincoln Riley had another take at Michigan, he would have started with what he did in the second half, not in the first half. Okay, flying in at Friday night. I think you have time for breakfast, man, and getting over to the stadium, Zach.
Bevo Boulevard,
Yeah, that's
2.5 hours early. Bevo comes down the north entrance of Bevo Boulevard. 2 hours, 5 minutes before south end. Team buses come in. You want to do that for sure if you've never been there before. Hey, Dylan Jester, I want to answer one basketball question. Anything on Kingston Fleming's point guard out of San Antonio here, Texas, battling Houston, Texas Tech. I think NIL is going to be big there. We'll see what happens.
Where is
by the way, basketball practice started yesterday.
Where is Kingston Fleming's from in San Antonio, Jerry?
He's out San Antonio Brennan High.
Okay.
And the key there is I think Texas Tech, you saw it with Jacob Toppin, is more than competitive on a singular player in NIL. Kingston Fleming has always been a Nike guy. We'll see what matters at the end of the day.
And hey, Zach, since you are flying in Friday night, I put the link to the tailgate location in the chat once again for you. So be sure to come check that out on Saturday. All right, guys. Bobby, I know you have something that you want to share with people. So before we get to these last few super chats, I'm going to let you do that.
So I'm excited about this one.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people have been asking about this, and here we go. The OTF shop is now online. People have been wondering where Jerry and I put get our hats. Blake, you as well. Coffee mugs, etc. We've got basically 3 products. We got a patch hat that's both gray, black, and white. You can order those. The logo hat on the right there, or at least on my screen, the right. And then also the coffee mug that I try to use quite often. All of those now on the shop at shop.ontexasfootball.com, or you can use that QR code in the upper right to shop now. We tried to, you guys asked for it. We put it out there. Let us know if there's anything else you want us to do as regards to that. But please feel free. The store is open as of this morning. So hope to do it, guys. Hope you all enjoy it. Hey, everybody's saying this, and I've got to be honest. I tried, but doing all of that, as well as trying to cover the football games, go to do these live remotes and all this other stuff, it's hard to multitask in this world. And I will say thank you to my wife for helping us get all that done. So thank you to Jenny Burton.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, and I'm happy for all the guys and gals that have been asking for those, and I think we'll have more stuff in the future as well. People have been asking. It's been answered the chat about Clayton Smith from Texas High, who signed with Oklahoma. He is at Arizona State, and he's having a good career over there. He'll probably have a chance. Have a chance to play pro on some level.
The 2 linebackers outside of Danny Stutzman that play a lot for them are both Texas kids. Kip Lewis, who I thought was a tremendous high school player. He's starting to come on. He's adding some good weight and starting to come on. And then Kobe McKenzie, Jerry, who originally committed to Texas and then bailed for OU a week later after making an official visit to the Sooners. He's playing really well for them. So after Stutzman, those 2 will be the guys.
And then the Osamogo kid from Crandall may have the highest upside of all of them as a pro. They're playing him more, and they really drop him deep too. Coverage at times. He is a hell of an athlete at 230. So it's all Texas guys around Stutzman. And by the way, Kip Lewis out of Carthage was obviously on some really good teams there.
Smart football player, man. He was a smart football player in high school.
All right, some more super chats we need to knock out, fellas. This is another one from Sugar Daddy. He says, Mike Hawkins is Jerron Hurd 2.0. What do you think?
Hot take. Hope Mike Hawkins doesn't pass for 541 yards against Cal. And then get relegated to receiver, 2 months later.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
And then another one here for you, Jerry. Victor Aldridge, thank you as always. Jerry, who could commit after we beat Georgia?
That's October 19th. I think you could see a couple on the defensive front, if not before that.
All right. And then back to Jackson Arnold once again from Jackson. Thank you, Jackson. Jackson Arnold would be singing in a group if his name had been Michael.
You guys are something else. Come on now. Let's be better than that, Jackson S. Unless that's Jackson Shipley, by the way.
And Trey Day here.
Bob, by the way, I don't know if you watched the winning drive yesterday afternoon, but Bob Shipley was in rare form yesterday.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now.
Yeah, you need to. He was funny. Rare form. These coaches, I'm doing lunch with the coach later today, and I will tell you that the thing with Brian Irwin and Bob Shipley, both former high school coaches around the state, had also coached in college a little bit as well. When they know they have a good team, they get a little giddy.
Yeah,
Jerry, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you walk into a high school coach and he's 8-0 and he's beating teams by 30, he knows he's got a good team, so he's a little giddy. Brian Irwin and Bob Shipley right now think they've got a good team and they're a little giddy about the Longhorns. So we'll see what they have to say later today on lunch with the coach.
I think it's so interesting. I think with coaches, there's two things. Just being around this and growing up in it, there's two things. If a team's really fast and it's obvious, and they have really good communication. If you see those two things, along with quarterback play on the level you need it, you get really giddy as a coach. And the other thing would be physicality.
All right. The next one that we have here comes from Steve Cap. Steve Cap wants to know best home win, iconic wins on road or in bowl.
Are you talking like all time or?
I guess that's what.
Best home win to be determined.
I think he's talking about of all time. Iconic wins on the road. There's no doubt Arkansas in '69 is the most iconic road win of all time.
I don't know if it's the best, but I would argue in my lifetime, the biggest home win for Texas was Ricky Williams and Mac beating A&M in Mac's first year at Texas, because A&M had a lot of momentum and Mac instantly flipped the script, signed the #1 recruiting class in the country, and was on the move.
Yeah, that definitely turned the tide. That season did with Ricky's Heisman.
At Ohio State,
that was a great road win,
and
an iconic one. The bowl games obviously are Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl for the national championship. I thought the Rose Bowl against Michigan was unbelievable as well. A lot of older folks that I talked to that were around back then will point to the Namath versus Novus Orange Bowl for Texas when the Longhorns beat Joe Namath as the quarterback at Alabama. Trying to think of other ones that are just iconic.
I mean,
home wins. There's a win over Houston when Houston was scoring 60 on everybody, and Texas just shut them out. That was a loud night. Nebraska win at home was big. We mentioned that earlier. The Notre Dame win in like 20. What year was that? When that was like a tremendous win, and then found out that Notre Dame wasn't very good and Texas wasn't very good.
It doesn't probably register because of where the program is now, but Mac year 1 win at Nebraska was awfully big for Texas.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was on Halloween. That was on Halloween, by the way. I think right next to Halloween.
I'll tell you a road one that's in the conversation for me, and I know I'm a little younger on some of this stuff, but Texas at Alabama last year, man.
I got to tell you a story about that game real quick, and y'all. My wife is on this chat every so often. So obviously there was a Halloween party, and we were dating at the time. We were not married. And my wife was wondering what she was going to go on Halloween. And that game, Ricky Williams had a really good game. Major Applewhite, let him hang a little bit. And we were all of it's talking about, I was like, Ricky Williams is going to be the favorite for the Heisman Trophy. I think he may have just won the Heisman Trophy. You know what my wife went as that night? She went as the Heisman Trophy.
Nice.
I had to go get her gold paint and paint her gold.
I love it. We need a photo of that. If there
is one out there. There is one out there. I may have to.
Can you go ahead and send that to the chat, please? Thank you. And Noah Ford asks, how many linebackers do we want to take in this class? The number's 3.
And right now they're at 2.
Yep.
You showed the film earlier of Jonathan Cunningham, obviously him. He's already in the Elijah Bo Barnes having a really good year. That film, by the way, you showed earlier of Jonathan Cunningham, Jerry, there was one play that was very David Benda-esque against Alabama, where he got chopped by the running back, knocked the running back's helmet off, then got up and chased the quarterback for a sack.
Yeah.
That was high effort, high motor, high quickness.
The thing that I totally agree. And the thing that really impresses me about Jonathan Cunningham, having been there a couple of times, is how much they move him around in the defense as a high school football player. It's almost like Ty Anthony Smith. And they're similar frames. I think Ty Anthony may have a little bit longer arms, but man, when you can move a guy from the mic, you can bring him off the edge, he can cover in the slot, he can even play safety in certain points and times in a game. That means Ray Gates, the head coach, who's a really good football coach and a really good defensive coordinator, now head coach, feels like he can put a lot on that kid's plate and he can handle it. That's a good sign. That's what Jasper did with Ty Anthony Smith in high school. He could play wildcat, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, linebacker, come off the edge, play safety. You could put a lot on his plate and you didn't feel like you were overwhelming him. That's a pretty good sign for Cunningham's future, I would say, if his frame gets to where you need it.
All right. Before we move on, fellas, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everybody about Duck Camp.
Yeah, Duck Camp is gear made for the people that live for the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, football to watch. They like doing all that stuff. So they built a company centered on it, based in Austin, and dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. There are those of you out there that look forward to the opening day of hunting season and the kickoff of Longhorn football with the fervor and excitement of a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. And Duck Camp is here to let you know that from opening day to game day, they've got you covered at Duck Camp. They believe you can't just sit around and wait for adventure to come to you. You have to get out there, stay out there, and make the most of every second. Here's to great seasons, y'all. Yes, hunting and football. Shop hunting gear at duckcamp.com. Again, we appreciate them also sponsoring a weekly giveaway at our tailgates. Michael Eilers won $200 gift certificate, as well as this Heather Clay hat that looks very burnt orangish. That's a really tight one that I wear sometimes on this show. But thank you to Duck Camp for their sponsorship of Coffee and Football and On Texas Football.
Follow up on linebacker recruiting. I want to answer this. Burn Orange Horns, Mattia Tegoai, USC commit, Madden Faramos, or take both. I think Texas would take one backer in this class. I'm not saying if a second elite guy fell in their lap late in the cycle, you would say no. You could say no. But then there's also the third guy on the board, Nathaniel Uwasu Boateng out of IMG, who visits officially for the Georgia game. Notre Dame, Michigan have been on him much harder for longer in recruiting. He also visited Ohio State, USC. But I'm a big for it. Look, I love either one of those kids from California. I think they are both studs and could be high draft picks. I think for Texas and the SEC, Madden Faramo, Elijah Barnes would be unbelievable. And I did speak with somebody close to the Faramo recruitment yesterday. I put a note on ontexasfootball.com, and Nansen and Faramo and family continue to talk about a visit this season. No date has been set. I would say if he doesn't make it in for the Georgia game, that's probably trending away pretty good, significantly from Texas. But we'll see. It's a long season. December 4th feels like it's close, but in recruiting time, it's still a long ways away.
We got some more supers that we need to knock out. I'm going to group a couple of these together because I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. Trey Day, thank you, Trey Day. He says, I think the reason we dominate so much and will continue to is that our guys are competing with each other for playing time, so they're giving it 100% all the time.
Hell yeah. I could not agree more. You can't, if you're Colton Vosick and you enter the game and you're third string right now, you can't go out there and go through the motions when you get on the field, guys. If you're Ethan Burke and you're trying to get more playing time, you can't do it. Go for it.
And I would also add this. When you get close to climbing the mountaintop like they did last year, that sour taste lasts a long time into the next season. That gives you a little extra motivation. By the way, I should have mentioned Riley Pettijohn. Texas continues to talk to Pettijohn, but unless he makes it to a game, no chance.
And then kind of along the same lines there, guys, Michael Dutton with Super Chat. He says, can we pause for a moment and realize how clutch the Sark hire was, how clutch pulling Quinn in, and how clutch the SEC move is? We were a poor coach hire away from 20 years of mediocrity. Hook 'em.
Amen, amen, amen. And the last one, we were a poor coach hire away from 20 years. Amen with an exclamation point. I mean, you guys know I went to Texas fan all my life, etc. The last 10 to 15 years have been kind of hard. It felt a little bit like the late 80s into the mid 90s. And I look, a lot of bad football, poor execution. I mean, 3 block extra points in a single game. Does anybody remember that?
Kicking off twice,
yeah, in the same game. Start the first and second half. Just a lot of bad things that happened in the last 10 to 15 years that are a lot of demons being exercised right now. I'll put it that way.
Hey, this is one I want to hit on. Football Texas, Ethan Burke is lively when he's out there. Continue to be impressed by him. Yes, very active. I think the word for Ethan Burke is active, Bobby. Very active football player. He can go make a play behind the line of scrimmage. He can use his 85-inch wingspan to bat a ball. He can rush the quarterback. We're not saying he's a perfect player. There's very few perfect players, but he's a very active player. He always has a play in a game somewhere, somehow. You could say he's a playmaker on defense. I mean, that in a different position than most positions where you call a guy a playmaker. He's just active. And by the way, I put up a story on TexasFootball.com before this. The biggest recruiting flips in the last 25 years at Texas. I started with Chris Sims was one, and I went through a list. It's been a pretty big topic on some Texas message boards and stuff. So I made a list of it's actually have some fun. You guys will have some fun with that.
A couple more supers here. Longhorn Frenzy 1. He says he may need a place to stay. A certain owner of a rival website wants to fight me. Any suggestions? And then UT Boy weighing in. He says, Frenzy, I got your back.
Well, Frenzy, let's see. I'm trying to think here. Well, if you'd have been in the end zone against Notre Dame, he wouldn't have found you.
Moving on.
The owner of the rival website probably is Billy Lucci over at TexX. I got to be honest with you guys. Lucci and I sat down together. Jerry was there as well at the SEC Media Days, and it was not antagonistic or any kind of fighting or anything like that. So look, Billy is who he is, and that site is who they are, and everybody just needs to move forward. Texas deals with Texas, and A&M deals with A&M, and I think that's the way it needs to be. If somebody wants to step over to fight somebody, then so be it, I guess. I don't know what to tell you guys. Seems kind of foolish to me. But.
I just gotta say I love that the game's back. This is so.
Yeah, that's the bigger piece, right?
By the way, I did update on Twitter this morning. Since it's September 24th, it's 24,424 days since A&M's been ranked number 1 in football. I had to put that on September 24th. There were too many 24s and 42s in it. 24,424 days since A&M was ranked number 1 in football.
Last super chat for today from Sugar Daddy. And thank you as always, Sugar Daddy. Can OU season get so bad that the Fasusis of the world don't think it's worth it? I know you touched on Fasusi a minute ago, but do y'all see them losing recruits if it gets worse?
Well, it's always interesting to me. Like now, FSU is a that's a different level, right? You start 0-3, it's ugly. With Oklahoma, I think you got to kind of see how it plays out this year. And what if Michael Hawkins? What if they struggle to 7-5, but Michael Hawkins looks like he's going to be a really good player for them? Well, then a freshman left tackle that says I have eyes on starting in Oklahoma, that may actually be attractive to him. So you don't know. I think. Look, I will say this. That's why I do think it's a must-win game for Oklahoma at Auburn this week. Because if you lose this game, I think things start to change.
They lose this game, and they're 3-2. And I'm just going to say this. Texas OU, Texas will be favored. South Carolina goes to Oklahoma. That's going to be a toss-up game if OU is 3-3 after Texas game. Ole Miss, they will not be favored against Ole Miss. They'll be favored against Maine. They won't be favored against Missouri
on the road.
They won't be favored against Alabama at home, and they won't be favored against LSU on the road. They theoretically could be looking at 5-7 or 4-8.
They better win this weekend.
The only for sure win they have left on their schedule is Maine. Now, I do think that Auburn is a very winnable game this weekend. I've mentioned that. So I think that they could be looking at 5-7, 6-6, 7-5.
I mean, look, that's the reality. That's why this weekend's a must-win game at Auburn for both teams. That's crazy to say this early in the season. But to that point, Bobby, Oklahoma has to beat Auburn. If they don't, who knows what happens with their season.
If they don't, they're not making a bowl game, most likely.
Right. If they beat Auburn, Lenore Sellers should be back for the Oklahoma game. That's big if he's not, obviously, because South Carolina has a quarterback issue beyond Sellers. But, yeah, because, again, tough road schedule. That's a tough road schedule in the SEC, man.
The point being, the only why I see somebody like Fasusi shaking loose is if there's a change at the top at OU.
Yeah.
And 4-8, does that happen to Brent Venables?
Boy, they just gave him a big contract extension.
Yeah. Well, those contracts have not exactly been a big deterrent for people making moves at their head coach.
We saw with A&M last year. What makes a rival make a early call on a head coach earlier than some expect is if Texas is doing really well. Puts a different pressure on it.
Yeah. OU's offense is historically bad for OU right now.
Yeah.
For OU, historically bad.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by MyBookie. We want to thank them along with Duck Camp and Manscaped all for sponsoring today's show. Bobby, anything that people need to be aware of coming down the line later today?
Yeah, absolutely. Lunch with the coaches later today. Please join us if you would. Myself, Bob Shipley, and Brian Irwin talk a little Longhorn football. I give them a platform to say what they're thinking right now about the Horns. Then also we have the live stream tonight. Aaron Hogan, Rod Babers, Jerry and or CJ will join as well. Talk a little bit more, take your questions. Make sure you come check us out on ontexasfootball.com. Right now, subscription just $39.95 if you use the promo code OTFOG. Please join our community. We enjoy talking to you guys, not just when we're online or not just when we're on the chat line here with on YouTube, but also all day long. Feel free to ask questions, etc. And then also remember, we just put out the OTF shop today, shop.ontexasfootball.com with the hats as well as the coffee mug. If you're interested, we will try to get those out within 1 day of your order. So we'll see how that goes, but hope everybody enjoys everything we're doing, and we'll keep it going here for you with the Longhorns still ranked number 1 in the country, man. 2 weeks in a row. It's just hard for me to believe where this program's come in such a short period of time.
And I put the link in the chat for everybody as well, so you can click on it and go straight to the store. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe. And
What'd you have, Jerry? Jerry wanted something. What did you want to say, Jerry?
Well, I think Fozzie Whitaker is going to join us tomorrow morning. He was in the booth for the Texas UL Monroe game, so we'll get Fozzie's thoughts tomorrow.
So don't miss that. And as Bobby said, head on over on TexasFootball.com. Y'all have a great day.